Wednesday night edition of Gold and Blue Dude, and I think tonight's going to be a good one. I mean, we've had several good ones recently, and I think this is going to fall right in line. Right now, the conference that's under the microscope is the Pac-12, so we're going to be talking about the Pac-12. Some people think that the Pac-12 is going to be just fine, nothing to worry about. Some people, like myself, think that they have some worries out there that they need to worry about, to the extent of maybe not even existing in the next 5 to 10 years. But before we go any further, let me remind everybody, please hit the like button. Even if you didn't watch this live and you're watching a replay of this, hit the like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. I noticed last night's live show, I think we had like 400 views, but because people were hitting the like button, we have over 1,000 views now. So even if you don't catch us live and you're watching the replay, hit the like button. I'm telling you, it really helps these videos. So it looks like we have a panel tonight. We have, well, my sidekick, Joey Foster. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, I'm excited, Rich. Talk some Pac-12 football.
Me too. We have Ty Guy down there on the bottom right, my bottom right. How you doing, bud?
Doing good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. And of course, this is a new guest, Twisted Rooster, who actually has his own YouTube channel. So since you are a guest on here, I'm going to let you quickly tell the people about what you have going on right now.
Yeah, my channel's called Twisted Rooster Tailgating. I'm a South Carolina Gamecock fan, so I'm an SEC guy, just like Tag Guy over there. And there's not a lot of South Carolina YouTubers out there, so I figured I'd bring the South Carolina side, and I love SEC, but really I love learning about other conferences.
Yes.
While I listen to Gold and Blue Dude, I learn a lot about the Big 12 listening to Gold and Blue Dude. I've learned a lot about, conference realignment. I don't keep up with the Pac-12 much, but I love learning about it. And I want to see the future of college football and what it's going to be.
And that's what this is about, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So we're in this period of time where we're looking for any little clue. And y'all know me, and I admit it. When I see something little, I blow it up into something crazy. That's just what I do. So we're in this time where we're looking at conference realignment, and we're trying to pick out, okay, what did that tweet really mean? What were they really trying to say? Or, what did that announcement really mean? And so we're trying to figure out what the next step is going to be. But if we're really honest with ourselves, nobody really knows what the next move is going to be. So we're just trying to make an educated guess based on the information at hand. Now, today I did a video, and yes, I overblew something. I did overblew something. So there was an announcement that Washington and Ohio State canceled their home and home for 2024, 2025. And of course, me, the lane that I pick is, this means that Washington, Oregon could be hit to the Big Ten, which who knows? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Or it could just be they're canceling. Ohio State didn't want to play Washington, didn't want to travel that far, and didn't think that getting a home game against Washington would make up for those travels, and they just said, no, we're going to call it off. Who really knows?
Can I tell you a little bit about that, Golden Blue Dude?
Yeah.
Do you know who else Ohio State plays in 2025?
2025, no.
The Alabama Crimson Tide. They don't want to play two big teams like that. That's what I believe. I mean, I don't have inside knowledge, and I can't tell you for a fact, but I don't think they wanted to play both teams.
Right.
But, you know what I mean? So that's
especially
where I
going on the road.
Yeah.
See, that's what I don't like about West Virginia's schedule. Okay, so I like playing our rivals, but last year we had a road trip to Pitt and a road trip to Virginia Tech. Thank God Virginia Tech was terrible, and we were able to go on the road and beat the snot out of them. Okay, we got lucky. But the thing is, when you have an out-of-conference set up like that, you're setting yourself up to fail. And then the Big 12 schedule is sitting there. And if you look at the West Virginia team versus Pitt, and then the West Virginia team versus, Texas, it looked completely different. It was like we were already beat and guys were tapping out. Now, fortunately, we were able to recover by the end of the year, make some adjustments on the offense, put in Garrett Green, run a spread type of offense, and we were looking much better. But we finished 5-7 because the beginning of our schedule was absolute terror. Fast forward to this year, yes, we get Pitt at home, but we also have to start on the road to Penn State. West Virginia has got to stop doing that. I don't know. Well, we want to test ourselves in the beginning. What are you talking about? You mean lose? Is that what you mean? Lose? No. Listen, if we want to play Pitt, that's fine. If we want to play Virginia Tech, that's fine. But those other 2 out-of-conference games need to be the FCS and a group of 5 team just like everybody else. Or not everybody else, but most everybody else. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a tough schedule. And all the Big 12 teams did it because the easiest schedule was Oklahoma State, who was 29th in the country. And we saw how that turned out. So, that could very well be a reason why Ohio State got rid of Washington, because having Washington, especially what really makes that make sense is they probably scheduled that before Washington was good again. Because in the past few years, Washington wasn't really good. They weren't. And then this past year, all of a sudden, Michael Penix Jr., and it looks like Washington is on the upward trajectory. So Ohio State's like, okay, so this was not a gimme game like we thought it was going to be. We already have Alabama. Let's swap out Washington for somebody else.
I want to say something real quick before we get into this Pac-12 discussion too much. Rooster, you threw your wife under the bus now. You got to promote her channel too while you're here. You got to tell everybody where to find your wife at, because she's got a good channel too.
Oh yeah, for everyone that's interested in cooking and discussing recipes, please go over to Twisted Chicken Cooking channel, and that's mine and my wife's channel, and she likes to cook, and we do most of our stuff. We live the RV lifestyle, so we cook everything on grills, even things you wouldn't think you could cook on a grill. We try it.
Nice. I like it. By the way, anybody in the comment section, if y'all have a question or a comment or a troll, you just want to make fun of me, I'm an easy target, and you want your comment to be on the screen, hit that super chat button. It's the little dollar sign you see on the bottom right hand corner under the comment section. Anything you put in that super chat is going to go on the screen. And oh yes, it's a great way to support the channel as far as donation goes. We always appreciate donations, but here in the off season, those donations mean just a little bit more, because we call this the grind season. People get disinterested in college football. So, that's why I'm coming out with all these crazy alignment scenarios and all that stuff to keep people engaged. And if you look at the comments section of all those videos, it is absolutely blasted. So we would greatly appreciate the donations through Super Chat, and your comment gets thrown on the screen for everybody to see. So what I wanted to do is basically everybody's going to be stating their case as to why they think is going to happen. Like, if you think the Pac-12 is going to survive, this is why I think the Pac-12 is going to survive. I think, I don't want to say that I don't think the Pac-12 survive. How I want to phrase it is, it doesn't look good for the AC for the Pac-12. I don't think the Pac-12 is going to last much longer. Maybe another 5 years, I don't know, but beyond that. And whenever I say the Pac-12, I don't mean the Pac-12. I'm talking about the brands in the Pac-12 right now. The conference itself might survive infinitely, but it'll be basically a rebooted Mountain West is how I think the Pac-12 eventually shakes out. So what I think is, number one, the Pac-12 going after SMU, to me, shows me that the Pac-12 is trying to stay intact, not trying to raise the revenue. I don't see any type of value as far as a TV deal goes. Maybe academics, they hit all the boxes and help in that area. But as far as the TV deal goes, I don't think SMU moves the needle for the Pac-12. So for me, the Pac-12 simply going after SMU, this is point number one, we'll go down the list, is, going after SMU, to me, says they're just trying to stay intact. They're trying to keep other teams from leaving and going out and getting a brand in the state of Texas, getting a footprint, in Texas. And then maybe in the future, that'll open up some gates to possibly pull some teams from the east side, maybe a Tulane, maybe some teams of the Big 12 or the ACC. But that's way, way in the future. As of right now, it looks like desperation, just trying to keep the group together.
Okay, so here's what I've heard and what I'm hearing right now is that there's been some holdup in the Pac-12. Obviously, we haven't heard about TV contract. We haven't heard what the expansion teams are going to be. Anything. But what the holdup has been, from what I understand, is the fact that a couple of schools within the Pac-12 were holding out a little bit because they wasn't sure about SMU. They wanted better more academic schools, so they were looking at Rice and Tulane as well. Now, as of just about an hour ago, it's back to confirming that SMU is going to be the choice. So San Diego State and SMU are going to be joining the Pac-12. Now, as far as this TV contract, everybody's panicking, saying, "Well, CBS backed out." Well, CBS has backed out of everything. They don't have
That's
money.
been a year.
Right. But then another thing too, if everybody remember in the Big Ten, when all the talks were going on, and Turner Broadcast came out and said, "We're backing out. The money's gotten too big for us. We're out." Well, that same thing is just happening in the Pac-12. Now Turner's backed out of the Pac-12 as well. They're not even bidding. So that tells me that ESPN and possibly Amazon have bid pretty high. Now I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Big 12 and everything, but they're going to be right there at the Big 12 numbers. It looks to me like they're going to be right there at about 32 million a year per team. And so that's why the Pac-12 is going to survive. Now, I agree with you. Anything's going to happen in 2031, 2032, that area, there's going to be some more conference realignment at that time. And so I agree with you that the Pac may not make it through that conference realignment if the Big Ten comes calling and drawing some teams. But right now they're fine, and it looks like that they're going to be have a pretty decent TV contract, probably 5 or 6 years, like the Big 12s, and they'll be okay. That's what I'm hearing. So SMU and San Diego State are definitely projected to be the ones to come in.
I think the biggest thing that really made me raise my eyebrow and wonder about this, as far as the value of it, is, from what I'm hearing, Amazon wants the top game. They want the top game. And for me, the biggest value that the Pac-12 brings to ESPN is, Pac-12 After Dark. Well, what does ESPN want to run on Pac-12 After Dark? Probably the best game. So that could be a little bit of conflict of interest between Amazon and ESPN. Could it be a deal breaker for ESPN if Amazon wants the top game? Is Amazon willing to come off of that and say, okay, ESPN can have the top game, but we want the next game?
Yeah, I think they're just looking at one game a week, 1 or 2 games a week on Amazon. So,
and ESPN needs the games. The Big 12 can't fill it. The Big 10 can't fill it. The SEC and the ACC ain't going to fill that time slot. The only conference that's going to fill that time slot is your Pac-12. And so
you could say the only teams in the Pac-12 can fill that spot. So it doesn't matter where the teams are. If Oregon and Washington go to the Big 10 and the Four Corners go to the Big 12, they could still fill that spot. Just doesn't have to be the Pac-12 label.
Right. But again, then we start running into the Big 12 has 2 mistakes going for them. One, okay, we're going to discuss the Pac-12. Well, they're getting San Diego State and they're getting SMU. Why? To calm it down and to make it. What did the Big 12 just turn around and do? Yeah. You guys added UCF, G5. It did not move the needle financially. You brought in Cincinnati. It did not move the needle financially. You brought in BYU. They'll bring you some money because of all the Mormons. Houston really didn't move the needle that much for you guys. So if you look at it, who the Pac-12 is picking up, it's just to get more content. So that way ESPN has more games at night.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Do you think the Pac-12 will be better off going to Thursday and Friday nights and not competing with the other conferences?
They already
Friday
do
night,
Friday
yes.
nights.
Friday nights, yes.
They do Friday nights, and that's already what I've heard and what I've seen and Amazon, the game they're going to do is the Friday night game. They're going to let ESPN have the Saturday night, but they're going to do the Friday night. Now, I don't know which one's going to choose the game first or second, but Amazon is looking more towards the Friday night. And the other thing I'd like to say, you mentioned, CBS backed out. Anytime nobody says they're done negotiating until it's over, because CBS would stick around just to try to lowball, but the writing's on the wall. So more than likely, by Turner coming out and CBS coming out and saying, we're out, no more negotiating, pretty much I'm willing to tell you that the contract has been signed. The bids are done. They now, maybe they haven't been signed, but it's been agreed to.
You know what type of gore we're looking at? Granted rights?
Their granted rights are only looking at like 7 years.
Okay.
And the other problem with the Big 12 is you guys forced everybody to sign their lives away. You made them sign.
I'm hearing there's still holdouts for the Big 12.
Texas made us do that. Texas made everybody do that.
Well, no. Texas didn't make you do that, because Texas just left, and you made everybody coming in doing that. So, I mean, they're still doing that, where you got to sign your life away. And I've heard people come to me arguing with me saying, well, guess what? If Oregon and Washington wants to come, the Big 12 wouldn't. Yeah, they're doing that. They're making teams sign their lives away. And nobody's coming to the Big 12 to lock in $100 million exit fee for 99 years. That's crazy.
Well, that's the TV deal. Kind of like the Pac-12 is saying that they're signing a 90-year TV deal. But the granted rights is totally separate. So
right, no, that's not the granted rights. The granted rights is going to be 7 years. But they want to sign a 90-year deal that they're going to stick together. Now, we've all agreed that that's been done in other places. Look at the Big 12 let Oklahoma and Texas out of that. 100%.
I mean, they waived the exit fees. That's the part I don't understand.
Yeah.
I think that
I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that either. I may have waived it for Oklahoma, but I wouldn't have waived it for Texas.
Well, let me ask y'all this. What would surprise you the most? I'm going to give you, hold on, let me count real quick. 1, 2, I'm going to say 4 separate choices, and you tell me what would surprise you the most, okay? Choice A, Washington and Oregon going to the Big Ten. B, Washington, Oregon, and Stanford and Cal going to the Big Ten. Choice C, just Stanford and Cal going to the Big Ten. And finally, choice C, the Four Corners going. Did I say the Big? I meant the Big Ten. All those choices, Big Ten. This one, Four Corners going to the Big 12.
You left one out, because one would surprise me the most is if Notre Dame and Stanford went to the Big Ten. That would be surprising to me, because I think if Notre Dame was to join the Big Ten, they would probably pull Stanford too. So that would be
the most surprising, just because of Notre Dame joining a conference.
Right, that would be the biggest surprise. It wouldn't surprise me none if later on down the road in 2031, 2032, that Oregon and Washington join, or Stanford and Cal join, or that wouldn't surprise me that much. 4 of them would be a little surprising. That would, of your scenario, the four of them joining would be the most surprising to me.
Right.
I would put the Four Corners going to the Big 12.
That would surprise you the most.
Yeah, because nobody has yet been able to name me a college that has transferred conferences to go to a lower academic conference. Okay, and I hear people, they write all the time, and I bet in the next 5 minutes somebody in your chat will type this. Well, Texas A&M and Missouri went to the SEC, but think about this. When they left, there were only 4 AAU schools in the Big 12. You had 5, because Iowa State still had theirs before they lost it. You had Iowa State, right, which was agriculture, which helps nobody, because only A&M was the other team with real agriculture, so you can't share research. You have Kansas, who was medical, which didn't help A&M because they're agriculture, and it did help Missouri a little bit, and then you had Texas. But by those two going to the SEC, they were able to go to Vanderbilt, who was higher academic than the others, and Florida, who was higher academic. So it was actually, at worst, a lateral move.
Right. I was about to say that, because you just flipped numbers.
Right.
Let me ask you this, GVD, because, the Big Ten's dipping out in the West, and they already got USC and UCLA coming. So if any other schools that are in the Pac-12 decides to go to the Big Ten, So does that mean the SEC is going to go in and start picking from the ACC? Because there's no way the SEC is letting the Big Ten make more moves than the SEC is going to make.
That's where the Big 12 could come into play. And Tide Guy, me and Tide Guy have had conversations about this. If the Big 10 does go out and grab Oregon and Washington, that's when the SEC, if the ACC is still, up in limbo, grant of rights locked in, nobody's voting, they're staying as is, that's when the SEC could look to the Big 12 and grab West Virginia and Oklahoma State. And those discussions have happened.
And I would actually like to see West Virginia as far as a footprint for the SEC. And as being a fan of a team in the SEC, I would like to, as a team, West Virginia would make a good team for the SEC, in my opinion.
Yeah, they
would. I would be a little bit leery about the scheduling. We would definitely have to lighten up on our out of conference because the SEC schedule would be way more brutal. But if the SEC stays with divisions, then West Virginia would fit into the SEC East easily. And then Oklahoma State, SEC West. So you'd have one for the East and one for the West. So it would be, of course, a great move for Oklahoma State and West Virginia. And I also think it would be a good move for the SEC because they're getting a footprint in a new state, the state of West Virginia, and they're locking in Bedlam, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. That's a good rivalry that will bring in money. And Oklahoma State does have big-time boosters.
Now, what I'm hearing from the SEC is we're going to do the best of both worlds. We're going to throw Alabama and Auburn to the east. We're going to make divisions. But the divisions are for any sport other than football.
Right.
Because in basketball, you can't do 3-6-6 and all this. So we're going to do divisions, but that's mostly for your baseball, your basketball, your softball. Football, they're looking at 3-6-6.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's kind of, we're going to do the divisions because that works in basketball and the other sports, but football, it just don't work.
So you're saying pods?
Well, it's not going to be pods because everybody's going to have different, like Alabama. One thing that I've heard suggested is Alabama keeps Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU.
Right.
But Tennessee, Auburn, they're only going to play Alabama, and they're going to keep Georgia. And somebody told me they're looking at South Carolina, Rooster, as their third game. So everybody's going to be unique and have. So it's not going to be a pod where you're stuck with somebody else's rival. You get your own three rivals.
Yeah, kind of like what the ACC is doing.
Right.
Right. And this is what I wanted to say because I see that comment by DWE, W and OSU aren't going to the SEC. You can't word it like that because you don't know what's going to happen next. The way you can word it is West Virginia and Oklahoma State aren't going to the SEC if the ACC votes to dissolve and the SEC gets teams out of the ACC. There's different criteria as far as somebody saying this conference isn't going to get that team. That conference isn't going to get that team. You can't just lay that down as a generic fact. You have to say why, because if something else happens, then it can happen. Just like the scenario we just laid out. If the Big Ten goes out and gets Oregon and Washington, or say they get Cal and Stanford, and the ACC is still intact and nobody's leaving, then yes, the SEC could go out and get West Virginia and Oklahoma State in that particular avenue.
Now one thing that I don't understand, I've never understood about this, and nobody's been able to explain this to me, and me and Tony's talked on hours on this. We know for a fact that Cal and Stanford applied to the Big Ten, and they were turned down.
Right.
I don't understand.
I knew about Oregon and Washington. I didn't know about Cal and Stanford.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Okay, athletically, they're not great football, but they win a lot of championships in other sports. But academically, you're not going to get a better school than Cal. And Stanford's the top one. And Stanford's way up there too. So, and from what I heard and what Tony heard, Stanford was willing, hey, take me. I don't need $80 million a year, just pay me $40. I'll come for $40. I won't complain. I'll take a half a pay, just bring me over. So they wasn't even coming over for just the $80 million. They just wanted to be part of the group, kind of like your little brother taking around, when he's 4 years younger than you playing football. He just wants to be a part of it. That's kind of what Stanford was willing
I think we look
to
at it and say they turned
it
him down flat. I think we look at him and say they turned him down flat, but I don't know if it was like that or not. I think they might have just said, no, we're going to put the brakes on for a minute. We're not going to go any further with this expansion right now. I think in 2030, 31, I think they'll revisit that, and they will probably be in the Big Ten at that time. That would be my thought.
But then here's another good question, though, and I agree 100%, Joey, because like I said, me and Tony could not imagine why the Big Ten would deny that. I mean, because everybody knows they're great schools, but I made this comment the other day, too. Anytime a conference has added more than 2 teams or 4 teams or more, bad things have happened.
Yeah, or it was a reflex like the Big 12.
Right, and I don't think the SEC and the Big Ten, we don't know what the magic number is. Nobody knows. Is it a 16, 18, So I think we're going in increments. Okay, we'll take 2. Okay, we went from 12 to 14. Okay, that worked. Now we're going to add 2 more. So in 3 years, we're going to know if 16 works.
And to your point, Ty Guy, a lot of people say, well, and I saw a comment, that's why I'm referencing this. If West Virginia and Oklahoma State would have added value, then they would have already taken them. Okay, well, then you're saying that back when they added Missouri and Texas A&M, if Texas and Oklahoma would have added value back then, they would have taken Texas and Oklahoma back then. That's just not how it works. They're doing 2 by 2. So they're waiting on, what another conference might do, because who knows? Maybe the Big Ten and the SEC do nothing. Maybe they're waiting for the other conference to make a move. And that's why we base that Oklahoma State and West Virginia argument on that, because we're saying if the Big Ten went out and got 2 more teams, the ACC still on lockdown, then the SEC would look at West Virginia and Oklahoma State, which, by the way, I don't know why people forget this. West Virginia has already been on the docket for the SEC. It came down to Texas A&M and either Missouri or West Virginia. And from what I heard, if West Virginia would have won the national championship back in 2007, West Virginia would be a member of the SEC right now. What happened? We goofed it up. Of course, 13-9 happened. And ESPN said, let's take Missouri, and that's who the SEC went after. So all this nonsense of, SEC never wanted West Virginia, never will want West Virginia. West Virginia doesn't add value. You don't know what you're talking about.
There's plenty of articles. You can go back. You can go back and find the articles that were all written in 2011 about the SEC taking Texas A&M and West Virginia. You can find all kinds of articles on it. So there's plenty out there to read.
People automatically assume that because the ACC never wanted West Virginia, which that's a true fact. I mean, there was small talks between West Virginia and the ACC last year, but they assume, well, the SEC's a better football conference than the ACC, so if the ACC never wanted them, then certainly the SEC did. That's not transferable. That's not how it works.
I'd like to say I agree with what Sagat said, though. I think that they're going to try this 16-team, conferences. See how it works out right now. This might work out great with 16 teams. The Big 12, go to 16, and Pac-12 and ACC go to 16, and go with it that way. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But if it doesn't work out and they feel like they can add 4 more, then we might have 3 20-team conferences in 2035 at that time. So.
Okay, but think about that, Joey. And this is what I tell people. Everybody says, well, you're a Pac-12 homie, and you believe. Here's the thing. Think about this. Let's say it's 2034 and all the teams are open to transfer, right? Odds are that the SEC and the Big Ten are not going to go past 20 the next go around because they add in small increments, right?
Right.
So guess what? If they take Washington, if they take Stanford, that's 2 less teams they're taking out of the ACC, which we want. I would love to see Washington, Oregon, Stal, and Camphor go to the Big Ten. Guess what? They're not going to touch the ACC. So now I get my pick. Who do I want for, so for me, being an SEC fan, it would be better that the 4 corners go to the Big 12. And, that helps me because now my conference gets the first pick of the ACC.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think eventually that USC and UCLA will want travel partners out there on the West. Right now, they're in what you call the honeymoon phase. And I agree with you that these conference expansions are happening basically by 2 every once in a while, like a reaction, like the Big 12, they added 4. So I would say in the next 2 to 4 years, you could be looking at an invite to, I would say, Cal and Stanford, to be honest with you, as far as the highest likelihood. Number one, way better academics than Oregon and Washington. I know Oregon and Washington fans don't want to hear that right now, but those are facts. And then on top of that, they're California schools. So the Big Ten would own the state of California when it comes to Power 5 football. And then on top of that, USC and UCLA, they have 2 more travel partners, and their schedule gets easier. That's what makes a lot of sense to me.
I think that I think what would be great for me. I'd love to see West Virginia in the ACC, of course, but I would really like to see them in the SEC because I'd like to see a pod system with West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee in the same pod. That would be a great little regional rivalry there. I would love to see it.
I was about the same thing, Mr. Joey.
And this is not a knock on West Virginia because you guys are good. But think about this. If I were to give you an extra $30 million for the last 10 years, where would you be today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If your contract would have been with the SEC and you're making an extra $30 million a day, what kind of coaches would you have?
That's
Look what
the
you'd
thing.
be paying.
We wouldn't have Neil Brown.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'd have better assistant coaches. You'd have better facility. Not that your facilities are bad, but everybody's putting money into facilities and that.
Yeah.
Think where you would be.
We
If you think
have
about
one of the best facilities in the Big 12, but compared to the SEC, it'd be more like middle of the road.
Well,
If you
think about
think
that. Where were you in 2012 compared to Missouri? I mean, look what Missouri accomplished by, everybody says, well, West Virginia would get run over. They said that about Missouri, too. And didn't Missouri play back-to-back SEC championship games?
Yep.
Wasn't their stadium
That was
a
back
little
when South Carolina was
dilapidated?
really good under Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, so I mean, Missouri fit in pretty well. They were kind of under par as far as recruiting in that, but they did awful well, for a while.
A lot of things would have been different because we wouldn't have had Dana Holgerson either. The only reason they hired Dana Holgerson was because we were transitioning to the Big 12.
Right.
Yeah.
That
was the only reason why he was hired.
Right. And I would trade Missouri for West Virginia, just like visually watching a football game, and you're watching a football game in Missouri. I don't know what it is about their stadium or whatever. It's not visually. Maybe it's the way their stadium's set up or they set the cameras up. It doesn't make for a good football game to watch, no matter who they're playing. And West Virginia fits more, like Mr. Joey said. You put a Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia kind of little. That's your 3 in the 3-6-6 model, which is what they're talking about doing in football. That's your 3 permanents, and then you're 6-6, and you rotate through years. I think West Virginia is much better fit for the SEC than Missouri.
Well, you think about it, but it's everybody says, well, they can't win in the Big 12. You got to think about that travel. It's tough. It is really tough when a football team's got to leave on Thursday. Football team's got to leave on Thursday so that they can spend Friday getting adjusted to the time change, and then go play a game on Saturday to fly home on Sunday to go back to class when you've been adjusted to a time change out west. I mean, it's really tough on this football team. It's tough on everything.
Almost impossible too.
We see it in basketball. Hey, look! West Virginia played Auburn and played Pitt in basketball and blew them both away, right? But you in the Big 12, we can't seem to win on the road, and we have
a game on the road,
right?
And that goes back to what we were saying about Southern Cal and UCLA being in the Big 10. The travel between their schools versus the rest of the Big 10 schools, they're going to learn that's a big difference. And then you got your fans out there, your common fan that wants to go to a football game. There's not a lot of people in Southern California that's going to go to Ohio State or Penn State. They don't even go to their own home games. So are they going to really travel all the way to Ohio State? I don't see it.
There's not a lot of fans in West Virginia that can go to Lubbock either,
Right. I went to my first away game since joining the Big 12 this past year when we went to Pitt. First time I was able to go to an away game. So if West Virginia was in the ACC or the SEC, I'd be able to go to way more away games. Like we went to the Columbia Zoo, and I went to Williams-Brice Stadium just to look at it. It wasn't during the college football season, but I mean that stadium right there is only like an hour and a half from where I live. I can go to an away game there. Knoxville's only like 3.5 hours, something like that. I mean, most of these away games that West Virginia would have would be closer for me than even a home game for West Virginia. Same goes with the ACC. So I think it definitely makes a difference. And on top of that, the argument for West Virginia isn't West Virginia versus Texas and Oklahoma, because, of course, Texas and Oklahoma, way better brands. You have to rewind time back to 2012, West Virginia versus Missouri. I think West Virginia would have fit in the SEC better than Missouri. I think the revenue would have been better. And I know the argument is the TV market, but really, Missouri doesn't own what people think they own. I know they're near Kansas City, but that's basically a pro sports town. It's kind of like the ACC going out and getting Boston College. They thought they were getting the Boston TV market. You didn't really pick up anything, and the ACC is probably wishing they'd never done that.
Right. And like from what I understood, when it came down to who they picked between Missouri and West Virginia, who was going to come to the SEC, it was basically the network. The network said,
"Yep,
you're taking Missouri," that's terrible.
They didn't do that for viewership though. They did that for academics. They wanted the SEC to raise the academic level a little bit. So that's what they told them.
I'm gonna go into the conspiracy tunnel here for a second, and this goes back to whenever ESPN started showing scores on TV. Now we're really getting deep. Now you're really going to be confused. So I don't think that ESPN has a vendetta against West Virginia, but I think they have something against West Virginia. It goes back to the early 90s. Whenever you would see a score roll across the screen and they would go top 25, I kid you not. This is no joke. Even when West Virginia was ranked and they would go from 1 to 25, they would skip over the West Virginia game showing the score. Now, I know that's probably just in my head. I imagined it, whatever. But it just seems like all the decisions that ESPN has made and all the things they've done is, I'm not going to say against West Virginia, but definitely not for West Virginia.
Well, let me ask you this, GBD and Mr. Joey. You guys are very smart in this football community. The teams that the Pac-12 are talking about bringing in, do they move the needle when it comes to the common fan that wants to watch a football game? What would SMU bring Oregon as far as like, if your team's not playing and you're going to watch a football game on the side as a fan of other teams, maybe, is that going to bring a view?
If you're a Pac-12 fan, and let's say Oregon is playing San Diego State or Oregon is playing Iowa State, okay, they're going to be more apt to watch the San Diego State, or they're going to be more apt to than they would Iowa State. That's just the Pac-12 area. So that's what I would say about that is, so yeah, they move the needle regionally, maybe not nationally, but none of us are going to care about watching Oregon State play San Diego State.
Doesn't make sense to me, Joey. So that's why SMU doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because they're just after that Dallas market and getting into Texas, which I think
they say that, but that's all it is a label. SMU doesn't carry any if the Pac-12 is going to go after high academics, a Texas footprint, I would think Rice would be the easy choice, like by far. I know DFW is right near SMU, but they don't carry it. They can't even pack out a 32,000 seat stadium. So like if you're gonna go that route, which I'm fine with, a Texas footprint is great. That's what you want. I made a video on the three most important states that these conferences want a footprint in, and that's California, Texas, and Florida. So yes, they are going after one of the most important states. But I would have said Rice. That would have made way more sense to me.
Now can I give a shout out to one of your guys in chat? Your boy Jay, I love you. I thank you for coming over to my show last night and talking to me for a half hour. Unfortunately, I think you're back to drinking the Kool-Aid. You said SEC does not care about academics. Take out Mississippi State and name me one school in the SEC that is not either AAU in Auburn. Sorry, Auburn and Mississippi State that is an AAU or their state flagship school. Look at who SEC is adding. We added Texas A&M, AAU. We added Missouri, AAU. We added Texas, AAU. Academics, believe it or not, I play stupid and say, oh, we care about football, this and that. Believe it or not, my dumb school, Alabama, did $965 million in research last year, which beats every single school in the Big 12. And we're the dumb ones. They don't consider Bama a smart one. So academics really does matter. We just pretend like all we do is play football.
Now, Anthony had a question for you earlier there, GBD. I'm going to put it up on the screen because it's actually a pretty good question.
Does West Virginia have the academics to qualify for AAU status? If that's
no, wait, that's not the one I was talking about. That's not the one I was talking about. Here it is.
Panel, what teams can the ACC bring in from the Big 12 that can save us from getting torn apart if that rumor is true, that Notre Dame is trying to get the grant of rights dissolved? Honestly, adding numbers in general would help, because what that does is, so it takes a certain percentage majority to vote that. Automatically, if you bring in two teams, those two new teams are not going to vote to dissolve because they'll want to be a part of the ACC. So I don't think it comes down to like any particular school. It comes down to numbers. The more numbers you have, the less of a chance that has to happen.
I think that.
And to answer his first question, Joey, West Virginia is a funny school. You're kind of talking two different things. Academic-wise, West Virginia is a really good school. The problem is they have something that no other college really has, and that's a heart. They decided that instead of worrying about their academic numbers, they would rather educate people that don't get a chance nowhere else and give them a chance to become educated, do better in life, and get out of poverty. Yep. And so that's the problem with West Virginia is if you look at their academic numbers the right way and take in consideration for that, West Virginia is a lot better than you think. Now,
Rhodes Scholars, we have a ton of them.
Right. I don't know if you guys would quite yet be the AAU status or not. I mean, that's kind of hard, but
no, but we do have, I think we're in 17th place in Rhodes Scholars in the nation, 17th place in the nation in Rhodes Scholars. So, I mean, you think West Virginia and you think, just really uneducated people. You're wrong. I mean, we're a very good university. But the state law says that if you want an education, if you're a resident of the state of West Virginia and you want an education, they have to accept you. Yep. So that's a state law. And that's our motto at West Virginia University. We want to help everyone get an education, and that's what we care about. So, it hurts us. It hurts us a lot because there's a lot of people.
We can send those lower academics too.
Right. You think of a school like Pittsburgh, and there's a lot of affiliate schools they can send their kids to, and so they can keep their academics up at the main university and send them to a lower classification university that's still associated with them. West Virginia's got West Virginia Tech.
Does the opposite, Joey. At Alabama, we do the opposite. Our flagship school is more attorneys and then helping people, not to the extent of West Virginia, but our doctors go to the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And I bet 90% of your audience believes UAB is a whole different entity and their own because they got their own football and this and that. But that's Alabama.
Boy Jay, real quick, Florida State. Name one academic school that doesn't have AU status. Florida State comes to mind.
Yes, Florida State. It takes a lot to get in that school.
And does anybody out there know? Okay, the SEC only has 5 AAUs, but they're getting a 6th one probably next year. Georgia is being added. And Alabama, if we wanted AAU, we would bring back UAB and we would bring back Huntsville. And trust me, with those schools, we would get AAU, but we don't care about the AAU because we let those
you
schools.
You can easily go and get Rice.
Right.
Yeah.
But your boy Jay is making that argument with AAU.
Yeah.
You can't name one.
Well, people use that argument because it's the it's the check mark that the Big Ten waits on. So that gets spread to everybody. That's just a Big Ten thing. It doesn't classify a university academically better than another university.
Right, and like your watcher Cyclone Steve said, Iowa State has the #1 ranked biology ag school in the world. You know what, Steve, you're right. And the only reason Iowa State gave up AAU,
yep,
because for whatever reason, AAU kind of looks down on the ag schools. They're more into the medical schools. And so Iowa State was paying money to be in the AAU, and they wasn't getting their money back. I mean, the AAU didn't help them. And they said, you know what? We'll make the same amount of money by not writing the check as writing the check. So they quit writing the check and said, we're out.
Well,
it's basically like being a union and having to pay union dues.
Another thing too goes to show you that they care more about academics than they do like the football program, because they had AAU status, which means they probably could have gotten into the Big Ten. I would say could have at some point. They don't care about that though. They care about, you know, what's going on in their academic program, and like Chai says, they've got great research, but not in the medical field. So,
right.
Well, let me ask you guys this: as a South Carolina fan, I don't think they ever go towards being AAU, but okay, do you sacrifice teams over being AAU and not let them in your conference versus, say, football is #1, because you're talking to an SEC team, you're in the category of $50 million a year right now. So what's it going to be when the new TV deal comes out? I mean, I don't care if South Carolina gets AAU status, because they're going to make $70 million being in the SEC playing football. And right now they're talking $2 billion redoing around our stadium, redoing the stadium. They're going to take seats out, add more comfort seats in. All this money is coming because we're a division or a team in the SEC. It's not coming because people at South Carolina are very smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, your boy Jay, you're completely incorrect. Says if the SEC cares about academics, they would have more AAU schools. I just literally explained that the AAU is basically a union where the teams get, or the universities get accepted into the AAU, but then they have to pay AAU union dues. So no, that you're putting two things together that aren't the same.
Right, and you also got to look at it like this. AAU had 68 members. Now they're down to 65. If they get back to 60, they don't just all of a sudden say, hey, we're going to go to 100 members. No, it's a private party. It's a private club. And you got the leaders of the Big Ten in there with USC.
There's probably a ceiling too.
You got the Ivy League. The Ivy League and the Big Ten, and you know, the bigs in the ACC and the bigs in the Pac-12, they don't want to hobnob with just anybody.
Yep.
It's an elite group, and they're not just going to let everybody in.
Yeah. So does everybody remember?
Well, I mean,
does everybody
I guess
remember
what
last
he's suggesting
year?
is that the SEC should go out and get Rice, Tulane. What other Southern schools or around the SEC that they should go get? If they care about academics, that's what they should do.
Tulane had their chance in the SEC.
USF was a good one.
Yeah.
Tulane had their chance.
Too, weren't they?
Yeah,
Tulane was a founding member.
Yep, they're a founding member.
Everybody that thinks that these conference realignments have a lot to do with football, let me show you how wrong you are. So does everybody remember last year when the Pac-12 was talking about expanding, right? And they did a little vote, and they turned down expansion at the time. But there were two teams they were looking at expanding to. Anybody remember those two teams? It was Houston was one of them. Houston was one of them, and the other one was Texas Tech. Now that's two teams that are not likely powerhouses in football, right? They're not going to move the needle in football. They're not going to bring in a lot more income when you're talking about Houston and Texas Tech coming to the Pac-12. But they wanted them for the academics. So that's what we're talking about. A lot of this conference realignment has to go around academics and things and stuff. It really does.
Yeah, I agree. There's one team that I think really got screwed as far as who the Big 12 selected in their last group. Remember, the Big 12 got BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF. The one team that I would swapped out would be Houston for Boise State. I think Boise State, before the Big 12 added these 4 teams, was at the top of the list. Now that the Big 12 has these 4 teams and that clause in the TV contract says, no guaranteed money if you add more Group of 5 teams, well, that rules the Big 12 out, and the Pac-12 is going to look at their academics and snub their nose. SEC ain't going to add them. Big 10 sure as heck ain't going to add them. So the one team that I truly, genuinely feel bad for the fan base of Boise State, because their chance of getting to a Power 5 conference might be down to 0. And I think that the Big 12 made a mistake by choosing Houston over Boise State, and here's why. Houston doesn't give you an extra footprint anywhere.
No.
Houston doesn't have a big fan base, and no disrespect to all my Houston subscribers, because I do have several, but the state of Texas, basically it comes down to, Texas A&M and Texas are going to fight for the majority of the fan base. Then after that, you have Texas Tech, who carries a large majority, but then it's Baylor and TCU. Houston is down on the pecking order. So I really didn't see the upside of adding Houston. Boise State, on the other hand, they carry an entire state that gives you a footprint in a new state, and it actually helps BYU out a little bit, because BYU is not that far away from the core, but it would give them an extra travel partner, and I do think that Boise State would have made more sense as far as actually expanding, not just – see, that's the difference. Adding teams and expanding. So adding Boise State would have been the Big 12 expanding more instead of just adding another Texas school for the sake of adding another Texas school.
Plus, in Texas, you've got the pro sports too that are way above Houston. So, they're not going to be able to compete with the pro sports in the Houston area, and we're with the Dallas Cowboys over in Dallas. So, I think you're right there. They would have been better to expand their footprint somewhere else.
And the other team you should feel sorry for, GBD? Memphis told the Big 12 they were not ready at this time. Let us invest some money and get back to us. And guess what? That phone call ain't coming again. You had your one chance and you blew it. And I think everybody agrees that they were a lock to join. Now, I can't tell you, was BYU not coming? I don't know who wasn't going to come if Memphis would have accepted. But, yeah, now Memphis has agreed. They're fixing up their stadium. They're putting in money. And guess what? That phone call is not coming.
Yeah, they might have screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah.
Well, there's a comment in our comment section there, GBD and Joey and Ty Guy. You're an SEC guy. There's Go Black 45 says the SEC wants flagship schools like UNC, UVA, Clemson, and FSU. Well, Go Black, I'm going to disagree with you. Maybe with the exception of Virginia, which spreads the SEC's footprint. Clemson's too snobby to come to the SEC. They're the big dog in a small pond. They're not going to come out and be the small dog in a big pond. So, and Florida State's not getting in because Florida's never letting them in.
And honestly, Florida State is not the flagship school. I'm sorry to tell you guys. Florida is the flagship school of Florida.
And isn't South Carolina the flagship school of South Carolina? So they already have you.
UNC wouldn't come either because UNC thinks they're better than SEC schools. They're not.
Now, here's the problem, Twisted Rooster. That is not true. The leader of North Carolina has said many times that he wants to stay in the South.
But let me tell you,
he likes to have the South.
UNC won't get the votes because UNC and NC State are the two teams that kept voting South Carolina from getting back into the ACC. So what do you think South Carolina's going to do if those two teams try to come into the SEC? They're going to vote.
I think North Carolina's going to try to get the Big Ten anyways. I think it'll be North Carolina.
I think so too. I mean, I
Florida
think
State is pursuing AU status. I think they would be in there too. And then you're looking at either Georgia Tech or Virginia, which I think the Big Ten would take Georgia Tech, and therefore the SEC would get Virginia. The only one that people say is a lock that I'm picking this team. Don't get me wrong. I'm picking them to join the SEC if all this happens, but not confidently, and that's Clemson. Clemson does not have the backing of a lot of schools in the SEC. Maybe they've changed their mind. I don't know. Maybe adding Oklahoma and Texas changes the numbers. I don't know.
It does change the numbers. And think about it. If the SEC, no offense, Twisted Rooster, but I'll prove my point in a second. If the SEC wants Clemson, okay, I can tell you right now that there's at least 4, if not 5 schools who will vote no. So they don't have the numbers, okay? But guess what? We went from 14 to 16. So now we can't have more than 4 vote against it. So what do I do if I want Clemson? Virginia, you are now added. Florida State, Miami, one of those schools, you are now added. We got 18 teams now. Now let's vote on Clemson. You 4 vote no, you don't. And that, if you don't believe me, call Texas A&M and ask how the vote went when Texas came in. They didn't get the phone call until everybody agreed, and then we told Texas A&M, sit down, shut up, they're coming.
They didn't even tell Texas A&M until it was vote time. They're like, sorry, they're coming.
Another thing too, I believe if a vote came up tomorrow for the ACC to say, okay, let's vote on West Virginia, I think West Virginia would get in now, because it wasn't Virginia or Virginia Tech or Pitt keeping West Virginia out of the ACC. It was Maryland, who's now gone off to the Big Ten. So
North Carolina schools too.
Yeah, North Carolina kind of held them out too. So
yeah, and I wasn't saying that the SEC wouldn't take Clemson. I'm saying Clemson doesn't want to come to the SEC because
right, yeah, no, they don't want to
take a fiddle to Alabama and Georgia.
No,
and they would. So they're too arrogant to say, "Oh, yeah, we'll come to the SEC, but now we're no longer the dominant team."
Well, I live in Clemson, South Carolina, so I'm hearing that they're in favor of it. In fact, what I heard was one of the reasons why they built that new jumbotron that looks exactly like Georgia is because they want to have an SEC vibe to Death Valley. That's one of the main reasons why they built it the way they did it. I mean, I've been to both. I've been to Athens, and I live like 15 minutes away from Death Valley, so I've seen both. The construction is either almost done or is done, and they look almost exactly the same. And from what I've heard from Clemson officials and Clemson fans is, the reason why they built that is they wanted it to have an SEC feel to the stadium.
Well, Clemson is Auburn with a lake anyway. Everybody.
Could you imagine? Yeah. Could you imagine 2 Death Valleys? Could you imagine 2 Death Valleys in the SEC? You'd have the real Death Valley in LSU, and then you'd have the high school version of Death Valley in Clemson. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't come after me.
Our teams are Tigers, Joey.
Yes.
If you're a Tiger, you just automatically invited to the SEC. We got them all.
Don't come after me, Clemson fans. I was only kidding about that. I had to say it.
But that's the thing that wouldn't make sense about North Carolina and Virginia is, other than Vanderbilt, you look at all the atmospheres and the stadiums of the SEC, and North Carolina and Virginia just wouldn't fit. Now, I'm not saying that's what would keep them out, because it wouldn't. They would get accepted to the SEC, but whenever that would happen, you'd be looking around the SEC, and instead of comparing North Carolina and Virginia to a Tennessee or a South Carolina or a Florida or even a Clemson, if they get accepted, Clemson has a really big, nice stadium. You'd be comparing them to the lower teams like Kentucky, Vanderbilt, teams that have either 60,000 or less, because both Virginia and North Carolina, they do not hold 60,000. I think North Carolina's like 55,000, and Virginia's right at like 53, 50, some weird number under 60,000. So it would be a weird fit for those teams as far as football goes.
So Anthony is asking, do you guys think Miami has a better chance of going to the SEC than FSU? Because don't FSU and the SEC have bad blood? You're right, they do. So FSU most likely would not get in the SEC, in my opinion.
And
and that bad blood goes to 1992 when Florida State, when their best coach said it's easier to win a championship for the ACC than the SEC. We're not coming to the SEC.
Right.
The SEC remembers that. Trust me. Florida don't want them. Auburn don't want them. Georgia don't want them. And South Carolina said they don't want them. And Alabama.
And it's mutual. Florida State's on a mission to get AAU status because they want the Big Ten.
And let me tell you something, and I'm an SEC guy. You make more money in the Big Ten academically.
Yep.
And a few more bucks, sports-wise. Their contract's a little better than ours. Yep. And I get that rammed down my throat all the time too. Well, the Big Ten they make more money than you guys. It's not because of the product on the field. It's because they have Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C. They have all these markets. The Big
And now
Ten,
Los Angeles.
it gets a huge chunk of their sports money because of size of the markets.
Yeah.
Before, because you don't
now they
win
have
what,
Los
12
Angeles
or
too.
15 championships and not have the product. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which, when you look at the overall teams, not the academics, the Big Ten having a bigger TV deal doesn't really make sense, other than the LA market. Maybe that would make sense. But if you compare the SEC football to Big Ten football, the Big Ten is so top heavy, it's not even funny. Even the former great teams like Nebraska, they're not good at all. Wisconsin had a bad year, not a terrible year last year, but they had a bad year last year. And with the SEC, it's almost top to bottom really good teams. I mean, how many teams missed a bowl? Like 3 or 4?
Right. I mean, and besides Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's trying now, but all the teams in the SEC really do try. I mean, they're hiring big name coaches. They're doing stuff to facilities. They're out there recruiting. They do try. Now, I understand that some of them are bottom feeders and this and that, but look at Mississippi State. They went out there and tried, and Florida's down, but look who they're hiring. They're trying, It's hard. Not everybody can be over 500 in a conference that has, 14 teams and 11 of them are bowl eligible.
John Teal, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, GBD, what if the PAC goes away and now 2 G5 champion teams will get in with top 6 champs, meaning the expansion rules for the playoffs stay the same? A 7-5 Marshall could be in, and 10-2 West Virginia could be at home. I don't even want to think about that. But I don't think a 7-5 Marshall. I don't think a 7-5 team in the Sun Belt would get to the championship. But I guess it's possible. If all the conferences go away from divisions, then that's not possible. It's impossible. I'm hoping that all the conferences go away from divisions. That just makes the most sense. Why did they come up with that rule? As far as if a conference has more than 12 members, they have to have divisions in order to have a conference championship, because that's where we got all these weird conference championships that made no sense. You got the best team making the championship, and then like the 4th or 5th best team, who happen to be the best team in the other division, playing each other.
Yeah, and that all happened, if you guys look back, when the SEC came up with this, okay? And this was the SEC who come up with championship games. We did it in 92. We were the first conference. It was our idea. Slide was a hell of a commissioner. But they told Slide the only way that they would let us have a championship game like that is we had to have 2 equal. Now, he didn't say 12, but we had to have 2 equal divisions, and the champions had to play in it.
But how can you tell equal 10 years from now?
Well, no, equal numbers. Equal numbers.
Okay.
You couldn't do 6 and 5 or that. You had to have either a 10-team conference could do, but then when the Big Ten went up and this and that, then they changed it from equal number to must have a minimum of 12.
Right.
And they did that to kind of screw the Big 12.
Yep.
They were trying to force the Big 12 to go to divisions. Because honestly, if you think about this, it don't make sense to have the Big 12 championship game this year made absolutely no sense. Those teams that already played, we already had a winner. We already had one team above and beyond. So what did the championship game do except for give TCU a loss?
Well, but what's the alternative? Either not have a championship game or divisions, which wouldn't have made sense either.
Right, because by not having a championship game cost TCU or Baylor a chance at the BCS.
Yeah.
Now, here's a good question for you guys, and nobody discussed this for some reason. The Big Ten does not want to get rid of the Pac-12 because of the Rose Bowl. If you think about that, that's one of the other reasons the Big Ten don't want because they still hold the Rose Bowl in high esteem. Even though they took 2 of the best Pac-12 teams out of it, they still want the best Big Ten team to go to the Rose Bowl.
I agree with that for a while, but then whenever the playoffs came around and they rotated the Rose Bowl in and out of it. And on top of that, now the Rose Bowl has agreed to not play on January 1st, which is also taken away from the tradition. I don't think it's as important as this. Maybe it still is to a certain extent, but compared to, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't think it's nearly as important to the Big Ten. And on top of that, the Big Ten could own the Rose Bowl essentially, even if they allowed a conference other than the Pac-12. They could make way more money if they had the most stake in it, because now they have UCLA who plays in the Rose Bowl, so that argument doesn't make as much sense as it did in the past.
And plus, you got Michigan begging to cancel the Rose Bowl because they can never win in
it. That too. That too.
Well, Golden Blue Dude and Joey and Ty Galley, going back to your super chat there where the guy's saying that Marshall can get in 7-5. Well, in the group of 5, there are how many separate conferences?
Yeah.
5.
That's not going to be your best conference champion.
Yeah, that wouldn't be. Yeah, it wouldn't be the second best champion.
Getting in as the G5 champion is probably never going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and on top of that,
I'm just curious on that.
If the Power 5 goes down to a Power 4, I expect that rule to change from 6 top champs to 5 top champs as far as an auto bid. But I understand what you're saying. If that rule stayed the same, I just don't think a set of 5 champion would be a second best champion.
I think it's going to change.
Year.
I think we'll see some major changes. If we go down to 4 conferences, 4 Power 4 conferences, I think we'll see a major change even in the playoffs, and they'll tell the group of 5 to have their own playoffs, and there won't be any of them in it. I just see that happening too.
Yeah. Well, what do you think that number is, guys? If it goes down to 4, what's the magic number for each conference as far as how many teams?
I think 4 16-team conferences, 64 teams.
Yeah, I don't see, if we go to 4 conferences, you're not going to get over 20, because if we cut down, and here's the problem, if we cut down, the Big Ten is not going to even really want 4 conferences. If it goes the way it's going, and the SEC, we don't want it either.
Right.
Because why would we want to add 4 more of the best schools, and the Big Ten add 4 more of the best schools? So think about it. That's 40 schools. You name the next 8 best schools in all 3 of the other conferences, okay, and you take them out of there. Who else has and I'm not bad-mouthing any school, because you know what? Oklahoma State is great if they don't make it. TCU made the playoffs this year. But realistically, if you take the next 8 teams and move them to the Big Ten and the SEC, what's the 9th place team, and what is the realistic shot that they have a chance of beating Michigan, USC, or Ohio State out of the Big Ten, or Georgia, Alabama, and someone else out of the SEC?
I would take it a step further, and I just came up with this idea, and I'm actually going to do a video on it tomorrow. So I think if it goes down to 4 power conferences, you could be, even if it stays at 12, or if it gets bumped up to 16 or whatever number, 20 in the playoffs. I don't know. What I think could happen is whenever that happens, instead of, okay, the 5 top champions get in, blah, 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 I think it'll be, a certain designated amount for each conference. I think the SEC could be looking at, okay, the SEC is going to get 4 in every year, no matter what. 4 best teams in the SEC, they're getting in. Certain perks, as far as the higher you finish, the better your situation is. Let's say the Big Ten is guaranteed 10, maybe 4 because they have the same amount. I don't know. And then so on and so forth. Whatever numbers make sense. So at a 12 team, I would say the SEC is guaranteed 3. The Big Ten guaranteed 2. The ACC only guaranteed 1. The Big 12 only guaranteed 1. And the Pac-12 only guaranteed 1. But if the Pac-12 is knocked out, then that number goes away. Maybe that number goes to somebody else. But do you get my point in that?
But if you do that, then that's 8 spots guaranteed. That opens up for 4 others, which really isn't a bad thing. Because realistically, the SEC, and I'm not saying rightfully so or not, because, I'm not trying to play the homer. And I'll say the same thing about the Big Ten also. there really should never be a year 4 teams get in from the SEC. Now, this year we had 4. Well, LSU kind of snuck in there, but they won. We had 4 teams this year that could make a claim.
Yep.
But I can't make a claim for the 5th team. So 4 should be the maximum of any conference. I don't care what conference it is, my conference, the Big Ten. But if you took 4 from the Big Ten, and see, I would change it to 16 teams. But do 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC. We get half the field, okay? Because our conferences are just a little better. Okay, so there's 8. You give the next 3 conferences, the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12 one.
Pac-12's out of it. Pac-12's out of
it.
Okay,
well, okay. So then at that point, if the Pac-12 dissolves, then I'd give 2 to the ACC, 2 to the Big 12. Now you got 12 teams. And now the next 4 teams can be the best out of those 2 conferences or go down to G5.
Right. I like it.
So in this scenario, where does that push Notre Dame? What are they going to do?
That would be a maneuver to try to get Notre Dame to join a conference as well.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think this is a motive behind the playoffs expanding as far as the rules that came into place, but maybe they realize that it could help and they do take it a step forward because Notre Dame is guaranteed they will never, ever, ever have a bye week until they have or until they're a part of a conference. And Notre Dame fans are saying, we don't care. We'd rather play home games at Notre Dame. Well, whenever you win that home game and then you go on to the team that's had a bye week and you keep getting beat over and over and over and over, you're going to start caring. And I actually think Notre Dame should join the ACC. Even if it's just Notre Dame and the ACC goes to 15, no divisions, that's fine. Because I think the path to the playoffs would be just as easy as it is for Notre Dame now. But then on top of that, you're adding a chance to get the bye week. So you have the same easy schedule, the same opportunity to get to the playoffs, and a chance to earn that bye week. And I also saw this comment that said, well, you're saying that Notre Dame would never get the bye week, but Notre Dame always gets the bye week because we don't have to play in a conference championship. Yeah, but true, going into the playoff expansion, it stays that way, so you're not gaining anything. You're having something you've always had. So you're not gaining a bye week because you've never played a conference championship other than that 1 year. And what happened the 1 year that they played a conference championship, even though they lost, still got to the playoffs. Right. So just getting to the ACC championship might guarantee Notre Dame getting into the playoffs.
And let me say this too. So Kraken Halk is saying something in the chat that I'm going to explain this to you, Kraken. So he's saying there's 64. If we go to 64 schools in the Power 5, then what happens with teams like Indiana, Minnesota, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, who don't have football programs? Well, there's more to a conference than a football program. Yeah, you're talking about Kentucky. You're talking about one of the greatest basketball programs in the country. You look at Indiana, another great basketball program. So, there's more to it. And plus, you got to look at academics. Conferences care about academics. So, I don't think anybody's going to get kicked out per se.
No, the SEC will not kick out Vanderbilt, no matter how bad we're not kicking them out.
No, so there's a lot to look at there.
And to answer Golden Blue Dude's question, and also your boy Jay said they could make a rule that says if Notre Dame gets to 10 wins, they make the playoffs. Here's the problem with the playoffs in Notre Dame. The playoff committee has agreed long ago that in order to change the playoffs, it has to be unanimous by the Power 5. And guess what? There's one conference that is giving Notre Dame everything they want and is working against you guys, and that conference is the SEC. Because we don't want Notre Dame to go to the Big Ten, and we know for 100% fact they're not coming to us. So if they're not coming to us, we're going to kiss their butt and let them have their way, so that way they don't go to the Big Ten. That's the problem.
Yep. I think Kraken was countering your boy Jay when he said, if it's about academic, then the Pac-12 wouldn't be in this issue. See, there's two sides of the same coin, so that's a good argument right there. But the fact that he stated that the SEC doesn't care about academics because there's only so many AAU schools in there, That's just not how you label an academic school. So basically, what your boy Jay did was, if you don't have AAU status, then you're not an academic school. Well, you just spit on Notre Dame, you just spit on Florida State, you spit on a bunch of academic schools that just so happen don't have AAU status. They're not a part of the clique.
I would counteract Kraken by saying this. Academics are the exact reason Pac-12 is in this shape, because the Big Ten would take them. And that's exactly why they would leave to go to the Big Ten with all those academic programs. That's why you would have Stanford and Cal up there. You know, that's what's going to hurt the Pac-12 eventually.
And if academic money did not matter, the schools would close down. Because you can't name me but a handful of presidents. You can't name me but a handful of presidents that truly care about football. Most of the presidents of the university, all they want out of their athletic budget is not to have to pay for it. You find a way to cover.
Even our president, our fans have gotten mad at him for not caring about football enough. Like Gordon Gee is being roasted right now because we haven't fired Neil Brown.
Yeah. You name me one university. Anybody? I want you to name me one university that makes more money in athletics than they do in research and things like that. So you ain't going to find it. So,
well, actually,
Todd Wynn says. Okay, said, in recent history, has any team been kicked out of a Power 5? Well, if you could,
Temple.
I don't know if you could
Temple
consider the Big East a Power 5, but they were a power conference. Temple was kicked out.
Yeah.
I can name you one university that had more money in football alone than in research.
Who's that?
Alabama, because all their research is actually down in UAB.
That still counts. So that's still Alabama.
Was the new number one in basketball.
That's still Alabama.
That's still Alabama. So,
but that is the only school that could do it.
Did you know that? Todd Guy, Alabama, number one team in the nation in college basketball this week.
Do you know that Alabama is the only team in the last 6 years to be ranked number one in football at some point and number one in basketball at some point?
The only other two I know is Florida and Ohio State.
And bad news, I don't want to admit this, but some orange, ugly color school beat us tonight.
Tennessee, but they're top 10 team.
And we were on the road. And let me tell you what, we had it tied at halftime. And in the first half, we turned the ball over 17 times. Tennessee shot, 42 shots, and we only got 16 in the first half and was still tied. But, yeah, we played terrible.
I don't want to get off on basketball, but I just want to explain West Virginia's last two losses. Both Baylor and Texas shot over 50% from three-point against us. You can't win those games. It's just
anybody that thinks the Big 12 is not a tough place to play. I tell you what, you just look at West Virginia's schedule and look at what they've done to teams like Auburn and Pitt and things like that, and then they get in the Big 12 and get blown out by 30 points. It's crazy.
I mean, there you go. I mean, the Pitt's supposed to be the best team in the ACC, and they might get ranked this week, but they're not even ranked. They're believed to be a 7 seed in the tournament, and yet they're at the top of the ACC.
Yeah.
GBD, your boy Jay has a good question. He asked, how come Notre Dame doesn't have AAU? The reason they don't have AAU is they don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't need the extra money.
And that's our point about AAU. It isn't some lofty goal that you have to care about. It's just Florida State wants to get into the Big Ten, so they're pursuing it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't care. Notre Dame has over $25 billion a year in endowments. They don't need the AAU. They're not hurting for it. Plus, think about it. They're not in a conference. So if they were AAU, who are they going to share research with? They're not in a conference. I guess technically now they're in the ACC, so maybe they could do some with North Carolina and Duke and stuff like that. But let's be honest. Notre Dame thinks they're better than everybody else. They don't want to share research with anybody. They want to be able to say they did it on their own. So that's kind of why Notre Dame don't care.
Miami is not AAU, John Teal, by the way. I saw you ask that question. They are not AAU.
No, but they're trying really hard.
Yeah, but I think the SEC will pick up Miami. I really do. And
honestly, play-wise, Miami's more of an SEC school than a Big Ten. Well, money-wise, and they want to be the academics of the Big Ten, but they really do kind of fit in with the SEC kind of nicely.
Miami doesn't want that type of travel either. I mean, they already struggle enough in the ACC, and yes, they will struggle in the SEC. But the Big Ten travels, I think, would just put a burden on Miami that they might not even recover from. I mean, that's something that past the point of no return, if you know what I mean. And
think about going from Miami to LA.
no,
for a basketball game, or if your son was on the basketball team or the baseball team and you had to go clear over to LA to watch a game, that's a long trip.
Yeah. John Marzulli, you could say Pitt has gelled and would beat West Virginia, but you're considered a 7 team, even though you're beating up on a bunch of mediocre ACC schools. So don't kid yourself. Once it comes to tournament time, Pitt's going to flop. And just like, hey, we had to eat our crow last year. We could say 3 games later, if we would have played Pitt this year, or that one mistake cost us, Pitt was the better team. They beat us. This year in basketball, West Virginia was the better team. There's no redos, nothing like that. Maybe we'll get to meet in the tournament again, and we'll get to wax your rear end again. But as of right now, there's no excuse. You're beating up on a bunch of mediocre, at best, ACC schools.
This is the first year that I can honestly say I could really see 3 Big 12 teams in the Final Four.
Yep. Absolutely.
Maybe
4. Maybe 4.
I don't have delusions, but let Alabama make the Final Four. I don't have to win it, but we've never been to the Final Four. Let us just get in it.
I'd be happy. You don't have a good team.
We do. The thing is, though, we shoot a lot of threes. So we're kind of like the Golden State Warriors. As long as we're hitting, we're good. We have a bad shooting night.
It is official. We now know for sure that your boy Jay is brainwashed. Look at his comment. AAU means you're special. You're brainwashed, buddy.
I guess Iowa State didn't want to be special. Iowa State didn't want to be special.
Yeah, I mean, that's another great argument. Why is Iowa State no longer AAU? Because they gave it up willingly.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
They decided they didn't want to be special anymore.
And you know what? To be honest with you, I don't think Nebraska cared too much for they lost AAU status either.
Yeah.
No, they just had to have it to get to the Big Ten. And then when Michigan says, well, we're going to get you kicked out, Nebraska's like, we're already here. What are you going to do? Kick us out of AAU? You're not kicking us out of the league. We don't care. It saves us from writing a check.
Yeah. That's called being Big Ten brainwashed, because the Big Ten says AAU is special. So that must mean it's special. No, my friend. No, that's not what I mean. John Teal, thank you for the $5 donation, says plot twist. Florida State and Miami to the Big Ten. Why not double dip the way you did with California? That's an argument, not going to lie. Then hit a kill shot and take Texas A&M and Texas Tech. Guys,
Texas A&M's not going to leave.
I know y'all think I'm crazy, but I do think in the next, not near future, but possibly 10 years, maybe on down the road, I think eventually Texas A&M does end up in the Big Ten. I really do. I don't.
I'd say goodbye to him and not miss one thing.
But you know what? I'm actually hoping
Texas A&M
that does happen, because it opens up another spot. That's another opportunity for West Virginia.
And think about it this way, and this is exactly what the SEC would tell them. There's the door, and in 10 years, when it was a mistake, call up Georgia Tech and ask what they would do to come back, because you're not coming back. There's the door. Enjoy what you get. Enjoy the extra cost. And as far as Florida State,
it's all because of a team, Texas.
Yeah. But think about this too, though. Traveling fool or GBD, they leave for the Big Ten. How much recruiting will they lose? Because a lot of the kids are going recruiting because they want to play where? The SEC.
Yep.
Not many kids want to sign up and go to Wisconsin in November, go to Penn State in November, go to the Big House in November. There's a reason why these kids from the South stay in the South. They want to be closer to their family, and they want to play in warm weather. And guess what? The Big Ten is a great conference, but anybody out there, do your research. In the last 5 years, how many first-round draft picks has the SEC versus the Big Ten? In the last 10, it's It sounds hokey, but it's true. The SEC, it just means more. It really does in recruiting.
Richard, I wanted to ask you that. If that did happen, Texas A&M left the SEC for the Big Ten, throwing a fit over Texas, what would the rest of the SEC think about Texas A&M?
Oh, we would laugh at them. Oh, yeah. And it would kill them. I mean, it literally, for the game that they would, and think about this. Academically, the Big Ten does not help them. Because academically, they're an agricultural school. So what's that agricultural school? What tie-in in research do they have with Iowa's cancer research or Michigan's cancer research? You know, it's a whole different kind of research.
The only throwback that I would give at that is what I mentioned earlier about the Big Ten being top heavy. Maybe they could have more success as far as wins go. Wins, not recruiting, wins. Because they have more gimme games in the Big Ten.
But think about it like this too, though, and I agree with that. But how has that worked out for the Big Ten? How has Michigan fared when they had to play
Michigan and
in the
Ohio
playoffs?
State, who both
and
made the
Ohio
playoffs
State
this year, got beat.
Yeah, Ohio State's only won what 3 playoff games? Only 3 playoff games in what 8 years?
One national championship, and that was the first playoffs.
Yeah,
John's baiting us. John's baiting us with that one because we made the Final Four that year. He's baiting us with that one.
Okay. John Marzullo, thank you for the donation. He says, this year's Big 12 basketball or 2010 Big East basketball, who's better in your opinion? Is he talking about team or the conference?
I think he's talking about conference, but I'd have to say the Big 12 was a bit better.
Well, was that the year that the Big 12 actually broke that record? Didn't the Big 12 break the record as far as most teams? Or no, that's still the Big East. And 2010 might be that year. I'd have to go back and see. I know that West Virginia was a Final Four team that year, but I don't know if that was like one of the stronger years. Big East was always good at basketball.
Georgetown, Villanova. Wasn't it Georgetown, Villanova, and West Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good ones. UConn was in there still.
UConn.
St. John's was good back then. Syracuse was in there still.
Yeah.
It was a good conference. It was really good. But for me to answer that question, I would really have to look at how the Big 12. Well, I know how the Big 12 looks, but I have to go back and see how the Big East looks and see how they stack up. I can't answer that question off the top of my head.
I would have to vote Big 12. If I had to vote right now, I'd have to vote Big 12.
Honestly, I would swing towards Big East. I would. But like I said, I don't have it right in front of me.
Yeah.
Because there for a long time, people considered the Big East the premier basketball league until the whole – and they're still pretty good. They just don't have a lot of members now, and the bottom is really, really bad now.
Yeah.
Like DePaul, terrible team.
Now here's one more question for you, Golden Blue Dude.
All right.
What would you put the odds of the Big 12 expanding by taking Gonzaga? Do you think they take Gonzaga?
I do. I think the odds are really good. I don't know if I like that. In fact, I don't like it at all. That's bad news for West Virginia, especially the years, which I don't know how the schedule would be structured because right now, because we only have 10 members, we have to play everybody twice. So we're guaranteed a road game against everybody. So with this, with expansion, we've already added 4 teams. That's a 5th team. I know minus Oklahoma and Texas. So only 3 extra teams or 4 extra teams.
No, 3.
I'll go back.
Gonzaga's
3. Even everything out is 3. So if we're guaranteed to play Gonzaga on the road every year, then that's a nightmare. But even every other year is bad enough. Now, for the Big 12 itself, it would be amazing. The Big 12 would go from being the best to be the undisputed elite basketball conference. As a West Virginia fan, I don't like it. I think the Big 12 will take
about it like this, though,
the Big 12.
If you're already at BYU, it's not that much more just to go to Gonzaga.
Right. That's why for the
as long
Big
as
12,
they do it like that.
yeah, that's why for the Big 12, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why they're going to do it. As a West Virginia fan, I hate it.
Yeah, no, I don't blame. And honestly, I mean, and nobody knows the numbers, but as long
And
as you're
started
giving,
tough enough.
as long as you're giving Gonzaga less than $4 million a year, you're going to make the money back. I mean, the basketball alone is going to make the money back.
John Teal has a question for you, Ty Guy. He says, Ty Guy, did you get to see Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson back in the day? Who was more impressive in person?
In person, I think Herschel Walker kind of reminded me of Earl Campbell. Herschel Walker liked to run over people. I swear to God, Herschel Walker would run out of bounds to hit more players. I mean, he loved to hit people. Bo Jackson wanted to show he'd outrun you.
Well, I think Herschel Walker, to be honest with you, was a better all-time great collegiate player. And I think Bo Jackson would be the better all-around pro player.
Right. And the reason I would say Walker was the best college football player I witnessed. Bo Jackson,
of all time.
Bo Jackson was probably the greatest or the second greatest athlete of all time I saw, depending on Deion Sanders. I mean, the two of them,
right up there. Yep.
Those two are great. So I don't know. Bo Jackson, I think if he didn't have the injuries, he would have played a longer football career and got to play more baseball and probably surpassed Deion. But yeah, Bo Jackson and Herschel. I'll tell you what, Herschel Walker was a great player, and I am happy to say that I actually got to watch him 2 different times in person play in college.
Hey, can you read that? Can you read that?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that whole my name wasn't engraved on the trophy.
You should have put under duress.
I just let him sweat it out, but
you should have had him put under duress on there.
I'm trying to relax everybody now and let them know that it's engraved and it's been engraved.
Hey, GBD, they're not giving us a chance, man. Everybody's saying they're winning. They're not giving you or I a chance at winning this.
About what?
About the Slav Olympics. They're not.
Oh yeah, I've never had a chance. The first year I was picked, I don't know how low. It was really bad. I finished like 7th or 8th, so it was top 10. And then last year I was still picked outside of the top 10. And me and Joey were looking at each other when we got to the top 5. We're like, all right, mission accomplished. We went to top 5. We were to the top 3. And me and Joey were looking at each other like, okay. 3 went by, 2 went by, and it was just like, I felt fulfilled.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of unexpected. We didn't expect GBD to win it. I mean, we figured we'd top 5, but
yeah,
we didn't expect to win.
We did well. We knew we did well, but I mean, just first place just seemed out of reach. It really did. So yeah, it was fun,
and absolutely nobody got mad.
Really.
Absolutely nobody got mad about it. Absolutely nobody got mad about it, did they, GBD?
No, and this year I expect to lose, and I'm not calling anybody out by saying this. I am not whatsoever. But I think last year's passing of the trophy was handled poorly, and this year it will be handled much better because I think the person that wins. I don't think I'm going to win. I'm going to say it right now. I don't think I'm going to win. So the person that wins is going to get handed the trophy respectfully.
Hey guys,
that's how I
got to run. I got another commitment on another show. I got to
wrap it up anyways.
But thanks for having me, Golden Blue Dude.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Great show.
Thanks.
Numbers were good again.
Awesome. Good job, guys.
Rooster, we still have over 100 people in. So before we get out of here, tell everybody about what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah. If you look up Twisted Rooster Tailgating, it's a new channel, and I'm just, common football fan, and I love to talk football, of course, and I also love learning about football. So my channel is based upon, once I get my live show started, I want to bring fans from different conferences, different teams onto the show, and let them tell about their team and educate me on what their team is. I'm not any fan base or anything like that. That's not the type of show I want to run.
Cycling Steve, you can drink as much as you want there.
That's right. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I just that's kind of how my show is. And then my wife and I started a cooking channel, and like I said, we do most of our stuff cooking on different grills and smokers and that kind of stuff. So people want to check out the the Twisted Chicken Cooking channel. We appreciate everybody that comes over and likes and comments on videos and gives us ideas on recipes and things to try. So
Now, see, here's the
Awesome stuff.
difference. On Twisted Rooster's channel, you see Twisted Rooster's ugly mug. On Twisted
Right.
Chicken, you get to see his pretty wife's cooking because he's the cameraman. So
I got you. Hey, since we still have a fair amount of people in the room, Joe, tell everybody the big
What we got?
news. for
Yeah, what we got
Golden
going on? Okay, so here's what we've got, guys. We are about ready. I'm going to be launching our new website. The new website's kind of up, but it's not really up. So the new website's going to be launched. I'm looking at tomorrow evening at 4:00, and it will have our merchandise store on there, their new merchandise. And it's not just going to be merchandise for Golden Blue Dude. You're going to be able to go on there and get merchandise for Mark Rogers, for Twisted Chicken Cooking, and for Twisted Rooster as well. Also, you'll be able to get merchandise for Eat 'em Dogs, Pigskin Pete, you know, a lot of channels. We have a lot of people that we've networked together with. So I'm working on all their websites, all their merchandise stores right now, and I'm hoping and shooting for 4:00 tomorrow, launching it completely and being ready to take orders. So anybody that's wanting a Golden Blue Dude shirt, a hat, coffee mug, whatever, be sure and check out tomorrow. There'll be a few things that won't be available yet, but they will be on the website. I can guarantee you can order a hoodie or a t-shirt off of it tomorrow at 4:00
Nice.
for any of these sites. But
Yeah.
that's what we've got going on.
While I got people here, if y'all have a quick second, go check out Mint Mobile. Tell them why, Joey.
Yeah.
Why should they go check out Mint
Yeah,
Mobile?
well, I don't know if we could talk about that right now. We haven't got our talking points on it.
In a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way, we can discuss that we have teamed up with Mint Mobile, and so yeah, check them out, guys.
Good work.
And
there you go.
I will get you a link that will help you out to get to them quicker and get you a little bit of a discount. So
Yes. And my brother, by the way, I can speak on firsthand. My brother switched to Mint Mobile before I talked to him about it. He loves it. Cheap and great.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good show. We're finishing off on a high note. We still have a lot of people in here, so everybody stuck around. So shout out to everybody that stuck around. Shout out to Brewster and Joey Foster. All the comments. Hey, don't forget to hit the like on the way out. And if you're watching the replay, don't forget to hit the like on the way out. That's what helps these videos get the views. And yesterday, you can tell because whenever we got off the show, we had around 400 views. But because people kept hitting the like button after the live was over 1,000 views. So yes, it really
also leave a comment.
Work.
Leave a comment in the comment section after the video's over. If you'll come back, just leave a comment and let us know what you think is going to happen with the Pac-12 at the ACC and with conference realignment. Let us know in the comments section so that it's always on there so we can refer back, because I'd like to see who's right and who's wrong.
Yep. And there's no such thing as a wrong answer. I mean, this is going
right.
Come on.
Right.
Come on. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Hope everybody have a good rest of your hump day. Ain't that crazy? Valentine's Day was yesterday, and now today's hump day. It's crazy how that worked out, ain't it? All right, guys. Y'all have a good evening. And it's official. Golden Blue Dude is out.